Hello, everybody. I'm like 3 minutes late. But luckily, Angie sends me a message. I have been making banana bread, 14 loaves of banana bread. So it has been crazy. So I hope everybody's having a good week. And Angie is in, Craig is in, Karen is in from Connecticut. Awesome. Hi, Karen. How are you? Well, tonight's going to be a fun night because it's going to be questions and answers with gardening. And so I'm totally excited about that, and that we can, have some discussion on what works, what doesn't work, what's fun with gardening. And sometimes you just have problems. Now, as a master gardener, we have to do yard calls is what they call them. People call the extension office, or they send a message, text, they put something on Facebook and they'll say, what's wrong with this plant? What's wrong with my grass? What's wrong with my trees? And so as master gardeners, we have to go and do yard calls. In fact, tomorrow afternoon, I have 4 yard calls scheduled. One is about ants. Oh, and Debbie's in. Hey, Debbie, how are you? They have a bunch of ants in one of the raised beds. And so we're going to look at that and what they can do to get rid of those ants. She has carrots planted right there. Now, what can you do if you have an ant problem in your garden? Now, for the most part, ants don't usually do damage in your garden. They can be annoying. They can make the dirt look like they're moving if there's lots of them. And I asked her, did you put any like diatomaceous earth? And she thought you couldn't use them because of the outer shell on an ant. But did you know that you can actually lay that on the ground, and the underneath of an ant is a little bit softer? And that diatomaceous earth can be very irritating to an ant. In fact, it can kill them. Some people will put cornmeal around because the ants, they mix cornmeal and sugar together, because the ants will actually ingest that, and it's a downfall. It will get rid of your ants. Now, you can use, if you had an ant hill that was by your garden, you could literally pour boiling water down that. Now, I wouldn't recommend that where you actually have plants, just because it is just too hot and it can kill roots of plants also. Now, Angie says, please help me with ants around my house. Now, there's different things you can do. Ants don't like ammonia. They don't like lemon juice. You can sprinkle diatomaceous earth. You can sprinkle cornmeal around. At one time, we had some ants coming in our basement. And so Joe was real diligent to keep putting diatomaceous earth where they were coming in. And it did get rid of them. And so I was happy about that. Jeannie, hello. Debbie says she is doing well, still negotiating with the seller to make it to Gillette. The real estate agent she is using is being a pain. Debbie and her husband are looking at a property that's very near me. And I think maybe you're going to have to change the name of your YouTube channel, because it can't be Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener if you live in Gillette. I have cornmeal. Yeah, anything like that. It does a thing with their digestive system, and it can really destroy ants. But the secret usually is mixing that with some sugar or some dried molasses, something that they're just really going to be attracted to. And so then they consume it, and some of it they take back to their nest, I guess you would call it, underground, and other ants consume it also. Hi, Judy. How are ya? Mama J from North Carolina. I use diatomaceous earth with my chickens. Works well with them. Diatomaceous earth is just one of those things that is just amazing. From chickens to gardens to around trees. You can buy diatomaceous earth that is food grade. And so if you know how to use it, you can actually consume it. I don't happen to consume it, but um, you could. Debbie Angie's suggestion is just drop to Cheyenne, which that would be true. But I'm totally excited about Debbie moving up here because we can do some things together. So that's awesome. Awesome. Diatomaceous earth and toothpaste. That is true. It's really it's amazing fossilized stuff. Now, one of the other problems that I'm looking at garden wise, well, yard wise, tomorrow I'm going to look at a yard that they had a beautiful lawn last year. Now they have sections, spots. Some of the spots are round, some of the spots are just throughout the lawn that didn't come back. And she raked everything, so she got up all the dead grasses, and she wanted to know what to do. Well, I'm going to go over there, but there is a thing here. Now, I don't know if it's all across the country or if it's just in the northern states, is that we have what we call snow mold. And it's if the snow sits a long time through the winter, sometimes it might start to melt, not melt, freeze again, becomes kind of icy, and it produces this thing on your grass that they call snow mold. And what it is, it just basically kills your grass there. And a lot of times they're in round circles. So, in fact, one of the people said, "It looks like ringworm in my lawn." And that can happen. Now, what do you do to fix it? Usually I suggest that you rake it as well as you can, loosen up that soil, add more grass seed. That's really your easiest bet to fix it. If your roots were really down deep in your grass, you're really a good waterer of your grass, a lot of it will come back, but not always. And so you're really better off just raking it some, adding grass seed, putting some straw or hay over top of it for a little while so the birds aren't eating your grass seed, and just let it come up. And then you can move that straw or hay out of the way. And so that just kind of, it's just an easier fix than waiting till partway through summer trying to see if the grass is going to come back. You might as well just add some more grass seed in there. Judy says, what can work with fire ants? All my diatomaceous earth is food grade. I have a very curious dog, so I'm careful. Well, the diatomaceous earth will work with fire ants, and I don't think diatomaceous earth will do anything with dogs, but I would look that up for sure. And are your fire ants specifically in certain areas that is causing you problems? I think most fire ants, from what I've seen in pictures, because we don't have fire ants up here, a lot of them are red. They bite. They're not fun to have around. But I would try the diatomaceous earth because I don't think it will hurt dogs at all. But what you could do is if there's an area in your yard that you're having a problem with the fire ants, you could maybe block that off, use some diatomaceous earth. If the fire ants are going up and down your trees, you can put about a 3-inch layer of Vaseline or some other kind of sticky stuff on the trunk, and usually ants won't go through that, and so that will stop them doing anything with your fruit trees or other trees that you might have. Up here in Wyoming, we just don't have fire ants. Now, they can have them in Arizona, but I just haven't had to encounter those yet, though I do know that they have them in parts of Arizona. Ange says, we had snow mold this year. First year I have ever experienced it. Yeah, it's really kind of a weird thing. But it's all fixable, so don't add grass seed. Grass is wasteful to a drought-resistant plant. I'm doing clover. Yeah, you could add clover. A few years ago, my brother over in South Dakota, he added clover, short clover, because clover can be different sizes. And so he added a short clover, I'm pretty sure his is white. Could be red. I'm pretty sure it's white though. And so he just mixed that in with his grass. And what he's found because of that mixture, one, he doesn't mow in May because it's no mow May. And it gives that clover a chance to bloom along with dandelions, so all your natives can have a lot of things that they can get pollen and nectar from. Because a lot of times early May, depending on where you are in the country, you may not have that many things that natives native flowers. So clovers, dandelions, things that flower very early are important to pollinators. Oh, Carol's here too. Hey, Carol, how are you? Angie says that her clover is white also. Debbie says, I have a nest of ants, carpenter type in size, but they are very contained in this one area of my garden. I have dug the entire nest up and removed it, but they keep coming back to that one spot. So there's something about the spot they like. Or when you were digging up the nest, there were still them farther down, which could be. But I would try the diatomaceous earth. You can add cornmeal into your garden, mix that with either the sugar or powdered molasses so that they take it down into their nest. And so you can start to get rid of those, because you don't want to pour boiling water or ammonia, things like that, into your garden. It's one thing when you have a nest of ants that's by your sidewalk versus in your garden space. And so you always have to be careful with that. Making friends with the weeds. If you plant them there, that they aren't a problem. Weeds are just things that we just don't know what to do with yet. And there are a lot of good things that weeds do. A lot of times when weeds come up in an area, it's because there's not enough nutrients and minerals in that area, because a lot of weeds have very deep tap roots. And so that they can pull that up to your soil always wants to be better. It's just naturally wanting to be better. And so if you have weeds, even thistles, they're sending those tap roots down and they're bringing up nutrients. I always like to grow sunflowers wherever I'm gardening, because they go down and they bring out that stuff. Now, did you know also with sunflowers, if you say you had an area that maybe there was some toxins or a spill or something, sunflowers are a great plant to plant. Don't eat the sunflower seeds in those areas, but they will pull toxins and chemicals and bad things out of your soil. And so a lot of times people will use sunflowers. Now, I have done that before, but most of the time anymore, I plant sunflowers just because I love them. And a friend of mine was telling me the other day that white pith that's inside those big stalks on the sunflower, she says that you can dry that and use it as flour. Now, I haven't ever tried that, but that's what she was telling me the other day. All over my yard. Dog is not bothered by diatomaceous earth, but hesitate to use the ant poison because she follows me and samples everything. Yes. Yeah. Be careful with those poisons. Good thing is ants are not in the house. Awesome. Yeah. But you can fix that. They won't cross lemon. They won't cross some essential oils. There's things that you can do to help that. Karen's asking, does baking soda really help your tomato plants for flavor? Karen, I can't honestly say that it helps the flavor of them, but baking soda in your soil can help your tomatoes. A friend of mine this was several years ago, was growing tomatoes with starts. And all of a sudden, the plants started not doing very well. Before, they had been just growing like crazy. He was very happy with them. And he says, he sends me a message. He says, what can I do? And I said, put some baking soda in with the soil You know, when you water it, it'll filter down through there. In a few days, his tomato plants were just back to normal. So that was kind of interesting, that just something that we have in our cupboard every single day can help in our garden. But it's like anything. You don't want to overdo things. It's like people when they add Epsom salt to help their tomato plants. That can be a good thing, but just remember, Epsom salt is a salt. All fertilizers, that chemical fertilizers that you buy, are salts. And it gets to a certain point, if you put too much in your garden, all of a sudden you'll be having this beautiful garden. About mid-July, all of a sudden your plants start dying. You probably have too much salts in your soils. Julie says, that explains why my artichokes, thistles, are doing so well over other vegetables, while other vegetables are struggling. Yeah, they send that stuff down, those roots down, and they can just pull up minerals and all kinds of nutrients in the soil that's down farther, that a lot of your vegetables, especially when they're starting, their roots are very shallow. They're not very deep yet. And so if you can have some of those things that are pulling stuff up, that's another reason why when you're gardening, you can do what they call chop and drop. And that just means that you're just chopping the vegetable when they're done, and you're dropping them right there in the soil and just letting them decompose. And now there's nothing wrong with doing compost piles. I'm not saying that, but there's a lot to be said about chop and drop, and it can make some great mulch around other plants. And why not, when you chop down those at the end of the season, those artichokes that you're going to rest for the winter, why not leave them on the soil, let them decompose, and send all of those nutrients that it pulled up back down into the soil. Judy says, love sunflowers, so many kinds. Now this year I'm growing some colored sunflower seeds. In fact, I got a couple of them right here. But some of the other ones I'm growing are state records. Like one of them, it's a last year's state record for West Virginia. The head of the sunflower was over 20 inches. And the other seeds was a state record. And the height is over 16 feet. So those are grown in my garden already. I started them inside, and then I planted them over at the community garden. So I'm stoked about that. Angie says, Utah has so many sunflower fields because of radiation from testing. Interesting. Now in North Dakota, they have a lot of sunflowers that they extract the oil from, because sunflower oil is great cooking oil. It's great to use it. Debbie says that you can eat the pad of the sunflower. Supposedly it tastes like artichokes. I haven't tried it yet, but no, a lot of gardeners are using it. That is true. I was just, I can't remember if I was talking to Debbie or if I was talking to somebody else the other day. No, I think it was Shannon, that she's growing sunflowers this year so she can cook the pad because it's supposed to taste like artichokes. So it's kind of fun, isn't it? Hi, Alpine Gulch. How are ya? I have ants in the thistles. In the yard from overweeding. May plant clover. Thanks for the idea. Clover is a fun plant. And you just have to make sure when you're buying clover, it'll tell you the height, because there's clovers that are just a few inches and there are clovers that are 3 feet tall. So you want to make sure you get the kind that, you can just grow them in your grass or instead of grass. And it will just, it's kind of beautiful in your grass. When I'm over at my brother's, it has all these little white flowers in the springtime. And even when it doesn't have flowers, it's a beautiful little plant. And so it's kind of fun. Judy says, everyone have great gardening. Got to get out of this bathtub. Thanks for the advice. That is awesome. Thanks for stopping by, Judy. Julie says, I chop and drop the artichoke leaves around the lemon trees. Excess celery makes good mulch. That is true. Oh, and look who's here. Blue Girl. How are ya? And Teresa's here too. How are ya? And Jake's here. Hello. As a renter, I'm forced to keep the yard. See, that is true. But you might maybe get some photos of what grass and clover look like together. See what your landlord thinks about that. Water-wise, it's better. That, I don't know if you have to pay your water or if your landlord's paying your water. But that is just something that maybe he's never even thought about. And it might, he might be open to it. I'm awake and have coffee. It's a good start to the day. Now Blue lives way over across the ocean, across the pond. And so it's very early in the morning. I think it's probably about 4 o'clock in the morning over there. So I am happy that you stopped by. Teresa says that it's 9:30. Yeah, because it depends on where you're living, And earlier, Paul was in here, and I'm not sure if I said hi to him, but I did see him. I'm scrolling back. Now, Paul is in Australia, so we got him both sides. So Paul has some great videos on things that he's growing in his gardens too. So that's always fun. He does a lot of shorts and then some other, and it's just totally fun. Oh, Blue says that it's 3:25. I was up at 1 a.m. because Tanny was off to work at 2 this morning. He doesn't usually go at 2 o'clock though, does he, in the morning? Maybe he does. I was thinking that it was a little bit later, like 4 o'clock in the morning when he goes. That's early, girl. I was in bed at 7 last night. Well, see, it's just a matter of schedules. My one cousin, he goes to bed about 6, 7 o'clock every night, but he's up at 3, 4 in the morning. That's just the way he likes his life. And he's retired. He can do whatever he wants to, Now, I'm not sure about the southern states, but the northern states, one of the problems that we've been having with evergreens is that in the wintertime, if the winter goes cold and then it's warm and then it's cold and then it's warm and it goes back and forth all through the winter. And there's lots and lots of wind. We have this phenomena that causes the needles on some spruce trees. A lot of times it'll start at the very top and on the outside edges, and it basically is wind burning those needles. And this spring, it is all over the place that it's happened. And a friend of mine down at the university, I just read an email from him today, and it's all across the state that it's happened. And so it's the one thing you have to watch with any kind of evergreen is that you don't plant the tree too deeply. It stresses the tree out, and so then when things like this in the wintertime, that phenomenon happens, they're more likely to get that wind burn, and that it kind of defecation of the tree, I guess, would be kind of, it just literally, the tops or the edges will just look like they're dead. And so it's just one of those things that, and the other thing is, it's a lack of water in the wintertime. A lot of times we don't think that we should water our trees in the wintertime, but more trees die because of lack of water in the wintertime than any other time. But here in Wyoming, I bet you 90% of the yard calls that we have with problems with trees is that they are not getting enough water. And that's a big percentage. Oh, Charmaine is here. Hello, Charmaine. Oh, and Teresa says they lost 3 trees. Now, people can lose trees. Sometimes it just happens. You're doing all the right things, and it's that weather that we can't control, and it just happens to do that. Jake says that they're losing pines to bark beetle. We had that come through Wyoming and Colorado and South Dakota a while ago, several years ago, and it was crazy how it would just do swaths on the hillside that those beetles came through. Now, people did take advantage of the dead trees, and they have made some beautiful furniture, but the problem is with those trees is not, you don't just have the beetles. When trees start dying, they can get bacteria and funguses and diseases in there too. And so you just have to be careful. Like you don't want to be cutting those down and chopping those up and using that sawdust or that bark in your vegetable garden or around your trees, because you just don't know what kind of fungus and diseases and if there's any beetles still there. You don't want to do it. Jake says probably lost 100 during the ice storm. Yeah, see, those are things you can't really control. You do your best and you cover things and you try to do stuff, but you just can't, some things you just can't control. Angie says, thumbs up, everyone. Thank you very much. And she says, have a great night, everyone. She is off. So, Ange, thanks so much. I made some plant stakes to go in my garden. And I'm going to have a few because I'm going to do the farmer's market. I hadn't done the market. I mean, last year I did it one time or 2 times. But I used to do the farmer's market every Saturday. And I am doing the market this summer. So I made some extra plant stakes that I made mine, and then I made some extra ones to take to the farmer's market. And if I would have thought about it, I would have grabbed them before I came and sat down. Oh, Cheryl, hello. How are ya? But it's when it comes to your vegetable plants, I just did last Sunday, I did a podcast, my first podcast on the amazing carrot. Now, there are tricks that people do, because one of the things I hear more than anything about trouble in the vegetable garden is growing carrots. And so there are things that you can do, if you have carrot flies, if you live places that you have carrot flies, plant them by garlic. If you need it to shade a little bit, plant them carrots and radish and carrots and radish. Somebody is zooming down the road. I like to cover my carrot seeds with aluminum foil. It has a reaction with it, holds the heat in there, it holds the moisture, and they germinate faster. And thank you. Plant stakes you made are beautiful. I think I'm actually going to give a couple of them away next week. I made some that were just fun designs, and I made some that are birdhouses. And I always like to make birdhouse ones. They look so cute in hanging baskets. Blue says, I have my carrots between leeks and marigolds, but also in the garlic bed. Yeah, because those things fool the carrot fly. Now in Wyoming, I don't have carrot fly ever. I've never ever even seen it in Wyoming. But there's a lot of places that get carrot fly. And it'll ruin your carrots. So there's just things, if you make a habit of going out into your garden every day, even if you're just taking a cup of tea and you're just wandering through, you start noticing things every single day. You notice when things start to change. And so it's always good to take that time, those short walks through your garden. It's not going to take you very long. You can always grab a weed here or there. That helps. But it makes it so it's you observe more, I guess, what I'm saying. Hi, Barbara. A weak tree becomes sick easier. That's true. You you know, and going through your walks, you're seeing your fruit trees, your shrubs, your berry bushes, your vegetables, and you when you're looking at them every day, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that tree's not looking the same. And the weaker your tree is, the sicker it'll get diseases, funguses, parasites, because it's a weak tree. Now, what can you do to help that? I always like to put some compost around the base of my trees, but I also, which I think is just a secret weapon, is worm castings. So a lot of times I'll put the layer of compost on top, then I'm putting a layer of the worm castings, and then every time it rains or I water, it's just percolating down in there, and it's just giving that goodness to those roots, which in turn helps the tree, or it helps the vegetable or your shrub. And I just think worm castings are the thing to have. I've just seen them turn around plants and trees and veggies so many times that I think they're well worth it. Either you have your own worm farm or you buy a bag of worm castings, whatever you want to do. And look who's here. It's the Bunky girl. Bunky says, oh, look at Bunky changed her name to Bunky Town. Good evening, Miss Sandi. I made it to you live. I am very late, but I made it. Bunky, thanks so much. And Ann Dale is here. Hey, girl, how are ya? Blue says, I put leftover meat stock on my fruit trees and the liquid from briming the turkey at Christmas, and they loved it. Now that is interesting. I'm going to do some research about that, Blue. I have not thought about putting the briming from the turkey on it, but a lot of times when I have extra sauerkraut, I bury that around trees and different things, because all the goodness of sauerkraut, it just, the microorganisms just love it in the garden. I mean, it's, your stomach, your intestines love it, and so does the garden. And so I've done that lots of times. I've done a video when I was doing a new garden area, and how I mixed my secret weapon, my sauerkraut, in with the soil. And it is crazy surprising. But I have not thought about using the liquid on the briming that you did for the turkeys. That is interesting. So I'm going to do some research about that. Basically, liquid blood and bone, if you think about it. That's true. Yeah, very interesting. Bunky says, my mama poured her whey on the plants last year. Does that count? I think that is great, because, whey or milk products, even powdered milk, is such a good thing to help with powdery mildew. Now you want to do it when you just either before, because maybe you have an area that almost always has powdery mildew, or if those very first signs of it, you can put that onto even the leaves, and it works really well. Blue says that she doesn't use a lot of salt in the brine, but I do use Celtic salt, which is 92 minerals in it, and they seem to love it. I can totally understand that. I could agree with that would be very interesting. Just remember, salts add up in your soil. And so you don't want to ever get a buildup with salts, because it can do some really negative effects in the garden soil. So you just have to be careful. But you have a garden or you have a big yard, you can always move that around in different places, different years that you're adding that. And then it's not accumulating up. And so that can be really good. Now, other things that I'm growing in my gardens. And there's a lot of charts that are companion that this vegetable grows good with this vegetable. This vegetable doesn't grow good with this vegetable. I like to keep those charts handy, but the more you garden, the more you just realize that, gosh, when I plant this plant next to this plant, it works really well. Like, do you know that when you're growing peppers, when the plant gets bigger, it wants the leaves to touch each other. They grow better if the leaves can touch each other. Now, that's kind of funny. It's like the peppers want to hold hands. And scientifically, they know that the plants will grow better if they're touching each other, which is kind of funny to me, because who would have thought that, oh, those peppers are touching each other. They must like it. But they do like it. And so, Blue says that she only does it once a year. So awesome. Now, I always like to grow some special things, so I'm growing those giant sunflowers. I'm growing giant pumpkins. I have giant watermelons that I haven't planted out yet, but they're under the lights. Giant celery and giant cabbages. Now, I've already planted a whole bunch of cabbages, but these ones I'm growing from seed, and so I will harvest them much later in the fall than those ones that I already have growing. And we've had rain. Actually, for the last week, we've had rain almost every single day, probably for about a week and a half now. And then we have all the smoky kind of stuff coming from Canada. And so everything is kind of hazy. In fact, yesterday, when the sun could get through a little bit, it looked like an orange ball because of the smoke. And so that was interesting. But when you're starting your plants out, it kind of shades it a little bit. So I'm okay with that. I don't want to have that smoggy kind of stuff all summer long, but it certainly helps them, when they're very first starting. Sandi, this may sound strange. 2 years ago, the wind took down the middle of my tree in the front yard, and I was so upset I cried and talked to it, let it know how much I probably love it, and it's now so pretty. Now, trees are so resilient, and certain trees want to have a central leader. Some trees, they don't care. But sometimes even when it breaks that center part, it can actually kind of stimulate it, and it can just grow like crazy. Now, sometimes does it harm it? Sometimes it does. But I have been amazed at how many times plants or trees are so resilient, and they just they turn out better, give it a year or two, and it's like amazing. Bunky says, I guess you're growing everything that are giants. Yeah, I'm growing a lot of giant things. But it's always kind of fun. And I have so many tomato plants down in the lights. It's going to be a good tomato year. Yeah, it's interesting about peppers, that how they just like to touch each other. And I mean, some plants are stimulated by other plants. It's all about getting to know your vegetables, really. Barb says, I'd love it now. She's beautiful. I see through my window, so graceful. She's still here. So grateful that she's still here. That's fabulous. Yeah, I'm amazed at what trees, actually, I'm amazed at all plants. They're so resilient. They want to live. That's all there is to it. They want to be productive. They want to set seeds. They want to propagate themselves. They want to live just like us. Now, I'm way past my 30 minutes. Sunday, I'm doing my second podcast. It's all about onions. Ode to an Onion. That's what it's called. And I wrote a little ditty on with onions, just little. It's just a little ditty. But onions are a fascinating vegetable. And so we're going to talk about those. And each Sunday, Sunday night, it'll pop up. I'm going to do different vegetables, fruits, berries, things like that. And I just think it'd be kind of fun. But everybody, I am going to let you go. I hope you have a great weekend. Got the farmer's market tomorrow and then 4 yard calls. So Saturday will be busy, but Sunday, it'll be a very peaceful day. But everybody have a great night, and I will see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.